pumping. And so we acknowledged in the project that we are complying with Ordinance C, and so we recognize that, and we're not going to, we've already taken that into consideration. So if there's any, did you want to ask a question over the other
do it on each
ones that did not, I'm not highlighting?
Oh, this is all? I thought you were going to do more. So that was the most important one to you. Any
Yeah.
questions then on the comments?
On this slide, there's some
Oh,
other slides,
Okay. So we're slide by slide?
Yeah.
Okay, got it.
In this slide, did you want to go over any other comments?
All good. It looks like they're all
Okay.
good.
Okay. So then the next one is, another comment we got was that we needed approval for the Fox Canyon for the additional pumping. We acknowledge that, and it is a very big issue. We actually we acknowledge that. We do need to get the 9,000 acre feet of pumping allocation. That is a policy issue the Fox Canyon's going to have to consider, and it is, we are asking that pumping be allowed without any surcharges or penalties being imposed during that 25-year period.
Questions on this slide? All righty.
Will that be part of their approval?
Yes, it is. So they also wanted us to revise a model to reflect the current drought conditions, and we, I talked a little bit earlier, was we did revise that model to account for those comments.
Questions? Okay, moving along.
The next one is the potential for subsidence and the poor water quality. This has to do with seawater intrusion, the concern that we are creating a pumping depression in the north part of the Pleasant Valley Basin, the potential there. And so they wanted to make sure that the concern was that we weren't dragging seawater intrusion further inland. And so we've actually had monitoring and contingency measures to address that.
Is that fiscally possible? Physically, is it possible to drag seawater to this level from a pumping?
What happens is if the basin is drawn down low enough, then yes, it'll essentially be below seawater, and the pressure from the sea will push the water inland. And that's the point that we've made, is our project is so far inland, and there's a pressure zone of water between us and the ocean that will never be drawn down to allow us to influence that. And there's that gradient I referred to. It's an underground pressure gradient that we will monitor to show that pressure zone is there between our project and the ocean, will always be there, and so there shouldn't be any influence between our project and the ability and the risk that there could be some pumping going on in the Oxnard Plain that we have no control over. It's not within the city, but it could cause seawater intrusion, and if there is a impact of seawater intrusion, we want to be able to demonstrate we're not contributing to that impact.
Okay, thank you.
So just to make sure I understand, so it's a matter that we would just have to prove that we didn't cause it, even if the ones closer to the ocean caused it?
That's correct.
And your feeling is there's always been enough of a barrier, so to speak, that our project isn't going to on its own?
Yes.
It would just be if somebody else did something in the middle?
Correct. There's a clear, measurable, quantifiable barrier that exists today, and we will continue to monitor to show that that will remain there.
And who would have the authority to allow more pumping in between us? That's outside of Fox Canyon, right?
No.
All of it, all the way?
It's all within Fox Canyon.
All the way.
And the area that we're measuring, we specifically selected so there wouldn't be any external pumping, extraneous
So
pumping.
they would basically have control over what happens next?
Correct.
Okay.
And the subsidence monitoring would actually consist of measuring field conditions every 5 years. And we would actually report it as part of the annual reports that we submit to the Fox Canyon.
And can I ask one more question following
Sure.
up? So my assumption would be if someone came in the Oxnard Plains wanting to do whatever, they would have to now take our project into account when they're looking at theirs.
Yes, yes. It's part of their baseline conditions then. Oh, I know. I forgot to add an item on this table, but it is in the response to comments, and that was a comment that we got regarding the preference for a 4,500 acre foot treatment facility, and because it had less impacts. And so we actually addressed that in the comments and responses, and our response is, it may have less impacts, construction-wise, it's the same impacts that we have as part of the proposal, but operationally, it does not meet the goals of the project, which are to clean up and remove the foreign water from the basin. So that is a basic premise for not moving for a reduced or a smaller facility for it.
And to put it in environmental terms, this was a comment from the Groundwater Management Agency, and initially they were saying that we needed to identify the 4,500 acre foot project as the environmentally superior alternative. But when we explained to them that the impacts are essentially the same between 45 and 9,000, but as Lucy said, the goals are not met for the TMDL and the salts cleanup, that in fact the 9,000 is environmentally superior, and they backed off of their position.
Yeah, so the good part about this is not only are we obtaining a water source for us, we also are cleaning up an environmental problem
Yes.
caused by Simi Valley. That's true. Can we send Simi Valley a bill? Huh?
So then the other concern was regarding groundwater levels, groundwater quality, and subsidence again. And so mitigation measures are already being proposed as part of the project. And then the last comment I wanted to highlight was flood prevention and growth inducement. We are going to include prevention measures for flooding to protect the project as part of the project construction. And we also, this project is not growth inducing. It actually will replace state imported water into the area. So that is definitely a plus on our side as far as the supply.
Questions? I had a question on the flooding. So they were only concerned around the plant itself.
Right.
There wasn't any issues down.
Yeah, they wanted to make
stream,
sure
so
that
to speak.
the plant was protected from flooding.
Wasn't historically the flooding, though, resulted from the rise of the Canal Creek, or Cayugas Creek in that area? Not that the land itself was flooding.
Right.
It was because of the water backing into that area from a flood from the creek.
Yes, that's correct. And then the last two comments had to do with the concern that we were not, or making sure that we took less than 5 acres of current agricultural land as part of this project. And so that's where we were trying to maintain as much, minimize that concern on agricultural land take.
If I could add as well, so while to minimize the impact of farmland, we were staying under the 5 acres, we're actually also creating a significant benefit to the agriculture in the area, because a lot of the agriculture wells that are nearby have experienced the same poor quality that we've experienced in our wells, and they've had to reduce, there's a limited number of crops that they can still grow, and as we draw down the salty water or remove the salts, that'll open up the opportunities for them to be able to grow other crops. So it actually creates a benefit to agriculture because of the fact we're cleaning up, in essence, a contaminated basin.
A question, certainly.
Yeah, well, if agriculture uses this water, does that mean they're going to have to apply more nutrients? Because, I mean, they depend a lot on what's in the water, not contaminated water, but normally there's a lot of stuff in the water. Does this mean they're going to have to add more onto the land?
So what if an ag customer were to take water from this facility, they would probably blend it with their existing wells because the water's too clean. It doesn't have enough minerals for them. Plus, it saves them money. I mean, you know, it costs less money for if now they're getting more an advantage of they can actually use the more expensive water and kind of stretch it out. So, yeah, that definitely, they would actually blend it with other raw water to serve their purposes, depending on what kind of water quality they need for their practices.
If I could add, though, the point I was making is not so much if they were to take water from our facility, but there's the historic groundwater that was very high quality years ago, and now that's been inundated with salts. As we remove the salts, it'll restore back to the high quality that used to be there. So if they continue to pump, they'll have high-quality water just like they had in the past, and they won't have to blend like they would with our water. They would just benefit from a better groundwater.
You have a question, Mr. Lowe?
We had talked earlier about the American Water. Are we going to cover that a little bit, discussion about how this is going to work with the two plants?
That is actually, we certainly can. It's really a side issue or a parallel issue. It is not, for example, with the Groundwater Management Agency, that's a business model that we're choosing to use to build and operate the plant. They don't feel they have jurisdiction over that as long as we define what the parameters of the plant are. The business model is not something they need to be engaged in. As far as the environmental document, checking both with our legal experts as well as environmental experts, as long as the document is addressing a specific set of environmental effects, so how much water is going to be pumped, where is it going to be pumped, what kind of monitoring and so on is defined, whether the 9,000 acre feet is pumped from one plant or two plants side by side, the effects are the same, so the environmental document did not need to be amended or edited to account for the business model. It's just basically saying as long as our overall extraction and the location of the extraction is what's represented in the document, that's all this needs to address. So that's why we didn't get into the business model. Now, if you want to get into the business model, we can do that. We can either explain it, or perhaps if you had specific questions, we could address those.
Well, I just was thinking, we have had some conversations about that new business model, and I just would like to make sure that I fully understand what's the responsibilities of each of the parties and who's, where American Water fits into our plans and so forth.
I'll provide a brief overview of that then, just to make sure that's very clear. Well, I hope it's very clear. So the project originally that we had planned on was to build one plant that would extract 9,000 acre feet a year, treat it, and use it for various, to serve our customers as well as sell to Cayugas. And we had created a partnership with American Water, who would be equity owners and also operate the plant. The problem is in California that old rules have not evolved, even though California says, yes, we're progressive and we want to push public-private partnerships, and the rest of the country is doing that as well. Old rules have prevented us from being able to do that easily, particularly LAFCO, and they even acknowledge they have some old rules in their code that makes it difficult to be innovative and to be able to pump water in a cleanup operation that extends beyond our service areas. So that got complicated, and also there's restrictions on public financing and grants that just are too constraining. So in order to be able to create a way to have an equity partnership, we're building two 4,500 acre foot plants side by side. We will own one, American Water will own the other. All the infrastructure coming in and going out, such as a pipe over to the brine line, will be one set of infrastructure, so we still get the economies of scale. The reason it works for this type of project is you end up building treatment trains or compartments anyhow, so we can put some of those on a property that we own, and then there could be a separate lot that we could own and lease to American Water, and they would put their treatment trains on their property. And so we're not really designing a plant that's too very dissimilar from what we envisioned anyhow. It's just we're going to have some of the plant on our property that is just public owned and public managed, and then we will have the other part of the plant, the other 4,500 acre feet, on public property that we could lease, but we're going to buy it with cash. We don't have the financing issues and grant issues. And then they can use that land and build their own plant, manage it, and it would be a private venture. So this is a way we've had to structure the business model in order to comply with all the rules in California. But in essence, it's going to look like one plant. People are going to see one wall, and inside that wall, there'll be a lot of water being pumped and treated.
Thank you.
And isn't the good thing about having American Water involved in that they can supply water to the farmers where we didn't have the ability to go outside of our area?
Correct. It does a few things. One, it helps us on the financing side because they will provide equity. We're looking at a $50 million project. We have a $5 million grant and $10 million sitting in our budget now, so we've got another $35 million that needs to be financed, and if we can have a private venture help finance that, that helps. And you also touched on it, which is accurate, that they do offer bring some flexibility that we can sell the water to Cayugas. They can sell water to Cayugas, and that can be distributed differently than if we sell water to Cayugas.
Which gets us back to our farmers.
Correct.
Yeah, so they're going to own one pumping station and we'll own the other, or how does that work?
That is correct. So we will own a 4,500 acre-foot plant, and we have the two wells, A and B, will feed into that plant, be treated, and the water that comes out of it, we will own and manage. The other 4,500 acre-foot plant, side by side, right next to ours, will be on a separate lot and will be privately owned. And the two new wells will also be built by them and owned by the American Water. So their water will go into their plant, be treated, and they plan to sell it to Cayugas.
Thanks.
Can I go back to, which got me, I was going back to the farmers. When we look at the existing wells out there and they're having problems with theirs, aren't we going to get more brackish water coming down? How does their water become cleaner over time?
We will be extracting water, brackish water, faster than what's migrating from the surface flows from the north.
So they'll be getting more new, I'm going to call it good water versus the bad water will come into theirs more quickly. Is that?
Yeah, part of what we can't predict is what will happen over time as far as future flows from the Royal Simi and then which feeds into Cayugas Creek. The assumption is that, and again, using the most conservative assumption in our model and in the groundwater study, is that the Moore Park desalter that they're proposing to build, once that gets built, the expectation is they may intercept all the surface flows, and there won't be any more surface flows in it to any substantive extent that would even begin to replenish or bring more brackish water into our area. They may intercept that. So that is why we have a limit of 25 years on our project, because the expectation is when you look at the minimal amount coming in and the amount that you're extracting is after 25 years, we will have cleaned up the basin and we will be reaching water quality levels that are so good that the Groundwater Management Agency will want us to start using allocation again to pump that. However, there is an acknowledgement that if maybe the Moore Park desalter doesn't go forward as fast or not at all, or something else happens where there's a greater amount of brackish water that flows, we may have to extend the life of our project to continue the effort to extract salts if we're not finished in 25 years. So a lot of it depends on what the future holds upstream that we can't predict.
Where does our good and bad water again, where does the good water come into that basin from?
It comes from the sources that it has always in the past. It's just water that filters down in our area that by the time it reaches the basin is fairly good quality. So it's not the surface flows from the north that are higher in salt. It's local flow percolation that.
Percolation is basically, there's no big creek or river or whatever that
there
brings it all down.
Part of what's being studied is there could be some interaction with the basin to the west, and there may be some of that, but that's also has good water qualities. But it's generally, you could think of the Oxnard Plain as more of its percolating in and and originating from this area, and it ends up being higher quality versus the surface flows that pick up a lot of salt are also coming out of treatment plants and have a lot of salt and have different types of, it's a different type of source that is migrating into the basin. Really right now, the other part of it is too, is it's migrating and concentrating in a very localized area at the north end of the basin. It's not percolating in and covering all the basin. And so the underground geology is almost creating like a bucket, and it's sitting in there, and the bucket has a leak in it somewhere, and that's what's causing it to slowly migrate to the west. But most of it is accumulating, which is why we've seen in 20 years the groundwater levels have risen 200 feet just in this localized area, where other areas the groundwater levels have been dropping.
I got just to clarify, you said that, we'll have 4,500, we'll build a plant of 4,500, and American Water will build one. If we need more water than 4,500, will we have a contract with them to, say, lease it, or not lease it, but buy water from them for a year or 2 years or whatever time we may think?
The expectation is that we will, in essence, have first rights to any additional water that we would need from their plant that we could purchase directly, and whatever the balance is, Cayugas will purchase.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Keep moving.
We're almost done.
Oh.
So, yes, just for housekeeping, the mitigation and monitoring summary is in your packet beginning on page 93. And in the last couple of days, we just figured out that there is a well that's in the mitigation and monitoring, which is referenced as 19A1. Actually should have been, it's like the first reference that I can find right now is page 95. It actually should be 19B1. So in the future, it's in the middle of the page. Let me see here.
The paragraph that starts with wells in northern Pleasant Valley.
Right.
Okay.
So in the area where it says wells in the northern Pleasant Valley project area, that's the paragraph.
95.
95.
Yeah.
It references an upgradient well. That well is a 19B1, not 19A1, and so we'll be making corrections on that. We had a little, I just wanted to be on the record that any reference to an upgradient well that we'll be monitoring is actually 19B1.
Okay.
Okay? So with that, that concludes the presentation. There's a proposed action for you to consider. Okay?
So the sentence the phrase will read, a Bell Ranch well with a whole bunch of numbers, dash 19B1 to the west of the extraction wells. And a third well located further upgrade 19B1. So those are both the same number?
Actually, the first couple of numbers, it's that the well number is that's considered the upgradient is actually 2N/21W 19B1. Yes, that was a confusion, and we were thinking they were same ones, and they were not.
So give us that number again, please.
It's 2N/21W dash 19B1.
So it is still B1, it's just got a
Yeah.
different.
It's just
well
the
number.
front, the
And so,
reference in the front of it is different.
and so let's go back another well,
Okay.
including a down gradient Pleasant Valley Mutual Water Company well, 2N20W 19M5 or 19E1, is that correct?
Yes, those are right. These are correct.
So going back to Mrs. Craven's first question there, then, both of those are 19B1. We're referring to the same well in that sentence?
No, yes. Oh,
Third and located.
The Bell Ranch well is correct, not 2N
Okay.
20W
no, you just told us it was
19B1.
21.
No, I'm talking about the one below it. It's,
Okay.
the up gradient well is 2N 21W dash 19B1.
Instead of 20, okay.
Okay. And then going on where I at least first changed the BA1 to B1, we're still talking about the same well then
Right.
to the west. But how can that be the third well if we were talking about the other one? Sorry, now I am confused.
Okay, so let me go back to the.
Read that whole sentence or paragraph for us or something.
So, let me just reference the map, okay? So, Bell Ranch well is located right around, just above the blue line here. And that number is 2N 20W-19B1.
Okay.
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 So I changed.
So it says, and then to the west of the extraction wells, and the third well located up gradient is right above, it's the Oxnard High School well, it's right at this corner here, and that well number is 2N 21W 19B1.
I gotcha. So, okay. And you're going to add that whole
Exactly.
reference in
These
there.
are surveying references.
Exactly.
Now,
Sorry for the confusion, but,
okay.
okay,
All righty.
Are in effect having a
okay.
All right.
So then, it's a motion to adopt a resolution adopting the supplemental EIR with the mitigation and monitoring plan, which begins on page 93. And then just wanted to let you know that that the mitigation monitoring plan is a CEQA term. And so it's for monitoring and contingency, and it includes all of the monitoring as required by CEQA. That includes cultural resources, hazardous materials, air quality, and traffic. And so we also mentioned the monitoring and contingency, and that's a term that we're using exclusively for Fox Canyon. So I just wanted to, there's some confusion there, and I just wanted to let you know that you're adopting the overall mitigation and monitoring. That's it.
That's
I
it.
have a question.
Questions, Mr. Kildee?
Yeah, Lucy or Tom, the two wells that are outside of our city limits, will we have to annex those into the city?
So the two wells outside of the city will not be annexed. They will be, because we're not going to be providing any kind of water or sewer service to those two areas, so they're not going to be annexed in there. We're just going to lease them from the property owners, the areas.
Those
I'm
go
sorry,
back to the
yeah,
American
easements.
Water ones.
Right, yeah. We're going to acquire them as easements and not actual, we're not going to create parcels for them.
But we do have to go through LAFCO with that, is that correct?
No, we will because they're attached to a project where we do have an annexation. So the property that the plant will actually sit on, we will be annexing, and so it'll all be bundled together as a project description as it goes through LAFCO. But their action will be focused on the land that we annex, not the wells. Now, LAFCO has some general rules in their code about where we extract water and serve it, whether you annex or not. And that's part of the reason we've had to structure the project the way we have with the two parts to it, is to meet their rules. So there's really two layers here: the rules that apply to annexation and the rules that apply to just general operating of a service area. And so all that to say, the wells will remain in the county. That's perfectly fine. We're allowed to have our facilities in the county and operate them. The only reason we're annexing the plant is because we want to have an office and a restroom, and if we're going to use water to serve in that office, we have to be within our service area. So that's why the plant's being annexed.
I have a question.
Mrs. Craven?
So if we annex all of the white area for the plant, that'll still leave 40 acres in that
Yes, it will.
area?
Yes.
In that, what do you call it, lot point?
Let me just follow
Yes.
up on, can I follow up on those wells? Those wells, didn't you point out that those would be the ones that American Water would use for their source of plant water?
That is correct. And actually, maybe to elaborate on the business model again, to keep the business relationship as simple as possible for outside agencies to understand and cope with. For example, the Groundwater Management Agency does not want to decide how much allocation they would grant to the city and how much they would grant to American Water. LAFCO does not want to have to decide, okay, let's do one project to annex over here and another project to oversee easements over there. We're going to treat this as one project. And the GMA actually, staff, and we met with, representatives of American Water and Bell Ranch, and everybody agreed the simplest way would be for the GMA to grant the allocation and all the approvals to the city. And then we would, through our business model, have a side agreement with American Water to work out our own details in the business model. So in essence, it's going to be one application going through the process with all these agencies.
So if down the road, for example, someplace in that time frame, American Water says, we don't want to do this anymore, we're not going to be burdened with having to buy back the wells or anything like that. We'll own. The only thing we'll have to buy back would be the plant, their plant.
Correct. Through our agreement with them, we'll have to cover all those options.
Okay. Thank you.
And I guess to do it all as one, we're truly looking at the whole impact. If we had pick it up in pieces, then we wouldn't have one big picture, right? So that's a good thing.
Yes. Yes.
Correct.
Any more questions? I do not have any speaker sheets. Would anyone in the audience like to address the council or have questions they need answered? All righty.
I'll make a motion that we adopt a resolution approving the supplemental EIR along with the mitigation monitoring plan.
I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Not, please vote. And that does pass 4 yes with Mr. Morgan absent. We don't have any items on the agenda. Anything else from council or staff? Okay, if not, we are adjourned.